they needed a writer to take the last 3 volumes of Hand of the Morning Star. And so Brett said, hey, can you do that? I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. And that was the first time I got to write superheroes, honestly, for comic books, which was kind of fun too. A lot of my comic book story has been being prepared and being in the right time and the right place, and being able to jump in and move ahead. But it's
I was
also
going to say, it's a lot like you were ready, God opened the door, and you walked through it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited about welcoming my guest on today's episode of the podcast. Ben Avery is a talented comic book graphic novelist. He is now writing a sci-fi novel that he plans to self-publish. And so I'm excited to talk to him about his journey so far, where he intends to go, and the business decisions he's made along the way. So welcome, Ben. I appreciate you being here with us today.
Hey, thank you, Rachel. So
Ben, before we get into like the nitty-gritty about the business decisions, the business world, being a creative in it, why don't you just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and the work you've done, and maybe where you live, what family do you live with, all those things.
So I live in Indiana, Nappanee, Indiana. So it really is, if you're thinking of the stereotypical Indiana, it is in the middle of cornfields for sure. But I mean, there is more to Indiana than corn, but not in my area. I live with my wife and I live with my 5 children. We have no pets or anything like that, but my kids range in age from middle school, and I have 2 in high school and 2 in college. So I actually had one night last week where I was working on helping my son with his middle school math, and I was helping my daughter and my older son with FAFSA applications for college. So, and actually I had to do 3 of those because one of my daughters is a senior.
Oh my goodness.
It was just this weird moment where I'm like, this is a weird stage in life right now.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So and I'm a children's pastor. That's my day job.
Okay.
I've been doing that for about 8 years now. And before that, I was almost 100% freelance writer, working on comic books and graphic novels. Before I was a full-time writer, I worked as an English teacher and a journalism teacher and a drama teacher. And then I also worked at a college with my wife where we were resident directors, and I ran the theater there. It's just different things like that. But yeah, that's pretty much
kind of in that creative space.
Yeah. So I graduated with a degree it was a liberal arts degree, which meant I had a lot of classes and we could make up a degree. And so it was a liberal arts degree with an emphasis in drama, in English, and in communication. Okay. So yeah, so all of those things have been kind of a part of my world.
So you're one of those rare people that is actually using their degree.
Yeah, technically, yes, I have been using my degree. However, I mean, like I said, I squeezed my 4-year degree into 5 years. And so it was just a matter of, you got the classes, you got the credits, we can make this work. And what I wanted to do with my life, like I've always known I wanted to write. That was always what I wanted to do. I call myself a storyteller more than a writer these days. Okay. Actually, even when I started on Facebook, that's what I named my Facebook page, was Ben Avery Storyteller. And that's because I was, I did puppeteering. I wrote stage plays. I wrote all sorts of things like that. But then I also worked with children where I'm teaching children about, Jesus and the Bible and that sort of thing. And and so storyteller has just kind of been the label that I've used for just calling myself, like, what do I do? And yeah.
So you have published quite a few things over the years. You've written a large body of work. So share a little bit with us about that, like the work that you have done over the years.
Yeah. So after I did a semester in film school, and then I did a writing program about film, I jumped straight into comic books. And so it was an interesting thing though, because before I left to go to the writing program it was Act 1 Writing for Hollywood, which some of your listeners may be familiar with. It's a Christian writing program at, I think it's the First Presbyterian Church in Hollywood. At least it was when I went there. And so I was wanting to go to Hollywood, and that was going to be my mission field, was going to be, Los Angeles. And that my wife and I were both kind of set on that track. And then when I came back from that, we kind of thought, no, I think we're supposed to be staying here in Indiana.
Mm.
But then right after that, an opportunity came to through some of my comic book friends, an opportunity came for some writing. I was writing the adaptation of The Hedge Knight by George R. R. Martin.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had already done some self-publishing in the comic world before that.
Okay.
And so that's how I kind of got to know this artist friend. And he was working on the project, wasn't too happy with the scripts that he had gotten from the writer who had been selected for the project. And so he asked if he could bring some friends in, have them write some samples, and then George chose the sample that he liked the best, and he chose mine. And so that was really what jump-started my writing career, was
Okay.
getting in on that project. And then from there, it turned into some small press work in Christian comics. And from there, that turned into something in Zondervan with the Zondervan graphic novel series that they experimented with, I don't know, 10, 12, 13 years ago. I can't remember how
Yeah.
long ago, but and I wrote a couple different series for them with that. The Hedge Knight project turned into 2 more books. One was directly for Marvel, and then I think it was HarperCollins published the 3rd book. And then through all of that, I got connected with Kingstone, which is a Christian comic publisher out of Florida that was just getting started with the Kingstone Bible stories. And that was a cool story too, where I went to a Christian film conference, the Gideon Film Conference. And while I was there, we were doing a mini comic convention. And
Okay.
there's a number of people who had done work in comics, and then other people had tables for their books and stuff. I'm sitting there with some of the Zondervan stuff I had done, Time Flies and Kingdoms. Kingdoms was about the exile of Israel into Babylon, and the thing I wanted to do next was the Gospels, because it kind of chronologically went along
Right.
with that. And I had someone stop by the table, and it was just small talk. And I said, really, the next thing I want to do is the life of Christ in chronological order, all 4 Gospels. And he just looked at me and said, yeah, so do we. So when you get home, why don't you send me an email and tell me what it'll take to make it happen?
Oh my
And
goodness.
it's a 10-minute conversation. He walked away. I turned to the guy next to me and said, I think I just got a job. And it was perfect timing, because I had a full-time job that 2 weeks earlier I had to resign from because they didn't have work to give me. It was
Oh,
a full-time
wow.
writing job for an animation company, and I'd worked with them for a year, but the projects that they were working on dried up, and it was just, I still have a working relationship with them,
Right.
but the whole full-time with benefits thing that they used to attract me away from my team, I didn't feel comfortable
Mm-hmm.
taking that. And so I said, well, I think I need 2 weeks because there's nothing more to do. And I didn't know what I was going to do next, And so I came out of that conference with this job with Kingstone that turned into a really just a blessed relationship with them, where I was able to work on Life of Christ. In the midst of that, I did the book of Job, which was another Bible project that I really wanted to put in graphic novel form. I worked on a book for them called Book of God, which was just a graphic novel documentary about the Bible and where it came from and
Okay.
how it came to be written, how it came to be preserved. And I'm not an expert, I'm not a biblical scholar, but having gone to a Christian liberal arts college, I knew enough of the questions I needed to ask and knew
Yeah.
enough of where to find the answers. And I also was able to connect with one of my old professors and who had actually worked on translating the Bible in a couple different translations. And so, yeah, so that was a long lasting relationship. Again, still have a relationship with Art and Kingstone. But yeah, that's kind of my writing career and how the whole graphic novel thing happened.
When you are saying that you worked on these graphic novels and comic books, were you the writer on that, or did you also do the illustration to it
Yeah,
too?
yeah. So you don't want me drawing a comic book. We want. I wish I could easily grab it. I do have a 24-page book that I did once as a challenge, and it was really fun, and it really helped stretch my muscles, but it does not look good. So
You're like, I
no,
know my lane and I'm staying in it.
yeah, yeah.
No.
I have done some fun like little things like that, but and it communicates and it's artistic, because it's an
Hmm.
artistic expression. But no, I'm primarily a scripter,
Okay.
and I script it for the artists, and then the artists will take what I've written, and I've worked with some amazing artists who have. Uh, there's 2 guys, Mike Miller and Sherwin Schwartzrock, actually, and Sergio Cariello. Um, who, when they take my script, it looks better than I pictured in my head.
Oh,
It's
that's
just
got to be
one of
so
those.
cool.
Oh, it is. When you open up that email, I just can't wait to open up the email when I see there's an attachment from Sherwin, because I'm like, oh, now it's been years since I worked with him, but he worked on one of my first books that I'm convinced people judge a book by its cover.
Mhm.
They can't help it. And, if you look at that book, you'd be like, wow, this guy's a great writer, because the art just carries it so,
Mhm.
so well. And he knew flow, and he knew how to design the page. So it did this. I keep going like this because the S curve, when you
Yes.
want your eye to travel in that S,
Yes.
and
Yes.
yeah, so I worked with some amazing talents, but yeah, like you said, I know my lane.
Yeah. So you have done all this work in the writing space, but now you're a children's pastor. Are you still writing? I know
Yeah,
you have the novel coming up, but I'm talking about, like, are you still doing other projects along the way? Like, have you continued working in like
yeah.
freelance work as you've been a full-time pastor?
So I've done some small projects for Kingstone. Once they finished the full Bible, they didn't have as much things that they needed from me, because the Bible was done. And so where do you go from there?
Right.
We're gonna stick with just the Old and New Testament, Um, but I have done a few small projects for them. I've also turned my attention toward audio drama, and so
Okay.
I've done some, I guess you call it self-published, but basically podcasting audio drama,
Hmm.
and then also have done some audio drama for a company in Michigan that produces base camp adventures. And so
Okay.
that's think think Adventures in Odyssey,
Yeah.
only it takes place on a campground in a mountain.
I was just about to ask you if that's what you
Yeah.
meant, and I was going to use Adventures in Odyssey as an
No,
example.
totally. That's exactly what it is. And I'm
Oh,
working
that's
on
fun.
some scripts for them right now. It's harder now working full time,
Hmm.
especially with the different just the stage in life I was talking about. It's a very stage,
Yeah.
and it's stretching me and pulling me in different directions. Um, and just fortunately, I have a just very talented and special wife who, I'm very glad to be sharing all this with her, because
Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't do it without
Yeah.
her. But yeah,
Those having that supportive spouse is like makes the world of difference.
yeah.
It really does. I'm not very familiar with being a writer for comic book or graphic novels. Like, did you need to have like an agent at all? Or was it like a direct relationship with the publisher? Like, how did you just get in at the right time, like before they started having all
Yeah,
this
yeah.
need for
So
like agents and stuff? Or like, how did that work out?
I've never had an agent,
Okay.
and honestly, I've had very few like book proposals that I put together.
Okay.
Um, so the work I got for, well, starting, I told you about the Hedge Knight with the
Right.
George R.R. Martin project. Um, and so after that, I had a friend that we had created this Armor Quest book, and it was done, or not completely done, but enough done that we could show it around. And we just had a connection of a guy who was like, hey, I'm starting a publishing company. I'd love to have that. So we're
Okay.
okay, we'll go with you. And then with Zondervan, I did have to create book proposal for Time Flies, because that was my project. But the
Okay.
other two books I ended up working on for Zondervan were not mine, and so it was that same guy actually who had started the publishing house that took Armor Quest. He got a deal with Zondervan, and one of the ways that he got one of his books approved was, I'm doing Kingdoms and Ben Avery's going to write it. And so Zondervan was like,
Okay.
oh, we got a working relationship with him. Um, and then on the other book that I worked on for them, it was again the same guy. They needed a writer to take the last 3 volumes of Hand of the Morning Star, and so Brett said, "Hey, can you do that?" I said, "Yeah, sure, I'd love to." And that was the first time I got to write superheroes, honestly, for comic books, which was kind of fun too.
Yeah.
Um, and so a lot of my comic book story has been being prepared and being in the right time and the
Hmm.
right place, and being able to jump in and move ahead. Um, but it's
I was gonna
also been
say it sounds a
relationship.
lot like you were ready, God opened the door, and you walked through it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so like I said, a lot of my projects I haven't had to do a book proposal for, because they came to me then and said, so Art from Kingstone said, we want to do this book called Book of God about the history of the Bible.
Hmm.
what do you got for me? And so I kind of pitched him a couple ideas, but it wasn't like I was pitching me. It was, here's my
The
ideas for
project.
this.
Yeah.
He said, we need Job. Take
Right.
some time off from the Christ and do Job. I'm okay, because I really want to do Job. And so there've been some things like that. And a lot of it has been, just having that relationship, and they trust, so like Art trusts me because he knows I'm a believer. He knows that while I may not be a biblical scholar, I am a teacher of the Bible, and I research well,
Mm-hmm.
and then I also understand the language of comics. And so it's
Right.
understanding the language of biblical narrative, and understanding the language of comic books, and trusting me with both.
Kind of approach it, and I love the fact that you approach it this way, but you kind of approach it with this posture of like, whatever I don't know, I can find somebody who does know.
Yeah.
And I can ask them, and I can get their input. Yeah. So it's like you have like everything's figure outable, that kind of
Right.
mentality.
And and so it means digging in, it means doing the research, but it also means I get benefit out of it as well,
True.
as I'm digging in.
Learning.
So yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's, I mean, pretty much everything. It sounds like it's almost like I'm living a charmed life or whatever, but it really is just like you said. I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
I've been practicing my craft, and when the doors were there, I was ready to step through. It's been very clear also when, like, this is a God thing. This was not
Mm-hmm.
anything I could have put together myself.
Right.
This is not anything that I could have forced together, because I tried. There were some times when I was working with some friends, and we said, hey, let's try and self-publish something, and it just didn't work out, and that,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, that's my plan,
Yeah.
not God's. And so we're gonna hold on loosely and let
Yeah.
go when we need to.
But I think there's something about that process of like trying and then realizing like, okay, maybe this isn't where God wants me to go with it. But until you try it, you don't realize that, right? Like you kind of have to start down the road a little bit before you kind of get that sense from the Lord that like, nope, this is not the direction. Go this way. Like he can't, it's kind of that idea of like, you can't turn a car unless it's going forward. Right. And so the same thing, like if we're so stuck worried about making the wrong decision, or am I doing what God wants me to do right now? Is this where he wants me to go? We can almost get so stuck in that like perfectionism cycle of like wanting to make sure I'm doing the will of God that I don't even start doing any of the work he's called me to. And so I love the fact that you just kept trying, and you just kept showing up and being sensitive to God's leading in those moments.
And the other thing that comes with that is I don't think any of that stuff was lost time,
Mm-hmm.
because those were all things that built those muscles then. And that, I got practice. I, learned to think visually going to film school and going to the Act One writing program. I mean, there's a whole long story that goes along with that. But like I said, it was what I thought God was calling me to. Well, God was definitely calling me to the Act One writing program, because it was a month later that I was writing that sample for George Martin. And that writing program helped me think visually, it helped me think clearly, it helped me think succinctly. And so like there was definitely clear educational value that translated over into this other thing that I had no idea. And instead of going and being a really tiny fish in a huge pond, I ended up being a mid-sized fish in a small pond.
I think too, especially being a writer, like when we're in writing programs and we're taught to like the craft of writing a story, while we see it visually in our heads, like sometimes the way that you put it down on the page, or the way you explain it, or the way that you use white space around the words, that's a different skill set than story arcing for a visual representation, right? And so the fact that you kind of had to move out of that writerly toolbox to the visual toolbox, and the fact that that program allowed you to do that so that you were prepared for when it came time for storytelling in a visual format, that's really cool. Like that's, people don't realize sometimes like storytelling is the same across all the, like storytelling is storytelling, but you have to understand the tool you're using to convey the storytelling. Now you're currently working on a sci-fi novel. And are you finding that it's different to go from this world of comic book and graphic novels to like a long form, purely text-based medium?
Yeah, because I mean, like you said, there's like a comic book is poetry and photography and film put together, because it has to, you only have a limited amount of space for the words on the page, but then you also have to make sure you have the action that flows and all that kind of stuff. And so you have to think in, for comic books, these steps, you know, and where, what action point do I want to capture, and do I want the artist to capture? And if I do it wrong, sometimes they'll add the panel in, you know, or they'll say, we don't need 3 panels, we can just do this in one. But yeah, writing long form prose narrative is a very different, very, very different thing. It's something it's not something I'm completely new to, but the publishing side is something I'm very new to. Like I said, I've known I was going to be a writer since I was able to put sentences together, you know. And so in 3rd grade, my favorite teacher was Mrs. Berry, because I had her on Friday and she was our creative writing teacher. I don't remember what else she taught on Friday, but I remember that. Mrs. Jenkins, Monday through Thursday, I was just very glad to have Friday.
Oh my goodness.
You know, and so that was something I've always known, I've always loved doing, and have just always done, really, is just constantly, you know, jotting down stories. And, you know, in high school it was Star Trek fan fiction, before I knew fan fiction was a thing. It had been a thing long before I did that, but I didn't know it was a thing.
Exactly, you know? Right. I know. I remember the day I discovered fan fiction too, and I was like, there's the whole world of this. Like, that's so interesting.
Well, I was, you know, writing Star Trek fan fiction because I love Star Trek and I want to eventually write science fiction for Star Trek or whatever. I do have one legacy in Star Trek, in that one of my journalism students that I had in high school 10 years ago is a writer now on the animated Star Trek Prodigy series.
Really?
Is super exciting for me. Like, I have a thumbprint, and he actually, you know, even said, you know, Mr. Avery, I learned so much about stuff, you know, from you, learned so much about writing from you, that, and then he's like, I'm working for DreamWorks now. And then next thing I know, a year later, I see on Facebook, I'm like, yeah, I'm not writing any adventures of Captain Kirk, but I've got a writer on staff who, you know, but in high school I was just doing that. And then I find out, like, that they had Star Trek fan fiction going back to before I was born, you know. We're talking, and, you know, as soon as Star Trek was off the air, people were doing that and just wanting to continue that. And that's another way to really build muscle, I think, is to, and I really value that time writing fan fiction, because it was allowing me to work with stuff that already existed. And it allowed me to kind of springboard. It was almost like using training wheels.
Right.
And so I had watched it on TV. I had read it, you know, read Star Trek novels since, you know, junior high. And this was a way to kind of take those baby steps into writing my own narratives and that. But the fiction side, the prose fiction side, has always been something that's been a part of what I do. But this is the first thing I've done that, it's first thing I've done in a long while that's been just for me, where it's been my own idea, my own character, not somebody saying, hey, we need this, can you get this for us? Or, you know, we've got these characters.
It to not be a collaborative work either.
Right. It's just in my own head. And yeah. And so it has been freeing and nerve-wracking and exciting and stressful. And but I really wanted to do it, and I wanted to write a science fiction novel. I wanted to do that forever. And so it was NaNoWriMo a few years ago where I said, I'm going to start this, and I did.
You started it a couple years ago. Have you completed the whole story?
It's done. I'm breaking rules. I'm breaking my own rules as far as, like,
okay. Tell us what rules you're breaking.
Well, no one's read it except for me.
Okay.
Like, that's a huge rule. If there's one rule I always tell everyone, it's you need another set of eyes. You need another set of eyes. You got to have more eyes on this. And I had some people who started helping by, you know, doing some proofreading and things like that, and they just didn't have the time to work on it. And next thing you know, it's like, well, I guess he's not doing it. So I feel like I've, over the years since I started it, the last couple of times that I've done a fine-tooth comb reread, I feel like I'm a new person reading it. I don't know if that counts, but
yeah.
So that's rule number one. And that's where I'm like, I don't know if I should pull the trigger on this. Do I just go ahead? And I'm getting impatient. I want to get it out there, you know, but at the same time, that's a rule, and I've broken it.
So you it's done.
Mhm.
So you kind of said something that I think is important. As a writer, we do come to this point where we're like, is the story just for me? Is it going to just sit on my computer? Is it just something that I wrote to explore questions that I have, or an experience I wanted to have, or a story that I just wanted to develop in my head for myself? Or do I want it to get into the hands of a reader? At some point, we have to make that decision. And it almost sounds like you're kind of at that, like, that
Well,
turning point. Like
no, no, no.
you want
Decision's
it.
been made. It's
Oh, it's
happening.
been to say,
No,
you
I'm
just
doing
don't
it.
know.
I
Okay.
don't know. I don't know if I'm going to take the time to do the extra steps because it's been so long since I
Oh,
started it.
okay. I see what you're saying.
Do I follow my rule, follow the rule? I mean, it's not just mine.
Right.
Or do I go ahead and do it now? I've got a
Okay.
cover that it this is the other thing I said, we judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
I don't think my novel can possibly live up to the expectations that the cover will bring, because it's
Oh
a
my
beautiful cover, just gorgeous, and it's exactly what I was hoping for. It's just this very minimalist kind of a thing that is just wonderful, and I'm thinking people are going to see this cover and they're going to think it's something really special, and then they're going to read it.
Oh,
And, but
I love
and
that
that's
even after all these years, like you have published with some, like you've worked on some things that are really, very cool projects. Even all after all these years, you're still like, it's that imposter syndrome. It never goes away, does it?
it doesn't, and in some ways it's not a bad thing. It's the artistic paradox
Okay.
where we believe that it is something worth sharing with the world, and
Mhm.
so we're going to put it out there, but at the same time we look at it and say, but no one's going to like it,
Yeah.
and I shouldn't say we all say that, but
And I
I
think we pretty much all say that. Like we're all in that box of like, okay, I think this is really valuable, but the moment I put it out there, somebody else can tell me it's not.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
and that's a scary, very vulnerable place to be in.
yeah, and I've stopped looking at reviews. I can't help myself sometimes, because I have podcasts and I do other different things. But for books, for my graphic novel stuff, I've just stopped looking at reviews altogether. The podcast, I can't help it because it just shows up.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
feedback on the YouTube videos, they just show up, and if you ignore them, that's not a good thing to do,
Right.
because you're supposed to engage with people. Quit what's the book review, Goodreads. I quit Goodreads because I could not help myself. I was looking at the reviews of my books on Goodreads. Someone gave Kingdoms a 1-star or a 2-star review on Goodreads because they didn't like the time period it took place in.
Oh my gosh.
Like, this is a specific time period, historical period of time. Like, if you don't like it, don't pick it up.
You're like, why? Who has the time to make those kind of comments? You
And
like to
so
like literally go and say, I didn't like this book. Like,
it was
not that it was a poorly written book or a poorly done story. I just didn't like the time period. It's like,
one sentence. And so I'm like, okay, I've got to step away.
yeah.
Uh the words live in my head, and
Mm,
ever since I've been young, things stick in my head, and the
yeah.
names and the words, and whatever you want to call it, self-esteem or whatever, I've always struggled with
Mm,
that. And so even my success has been like, when I was writing for Zondervan, there was a period of time where I'm like, they're going to discover that I can't write, and they're going to, shut this down.
yeah.
They'd already published like half the series
Yes.
and had already committed to finishing it. And
Yes.
it's just, why would I even say that? Why? Because that's just where my head goes, where my headspace can be sometimes. And it's a challenge for me. It's a challenge for my wife,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to rise above that. Very recently, I've been just working really hard at the way I put it is, if you want to rise up, you got to keep your eyes up.
Yes.
And
Yes. I was just gonna say, I think we were like, well, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep like doubting my ability, doubting the ability that God gave me? Like, obviously, people are working with you, people are coming after you, asking you for, projects. And I find myself doing the same thing. Like, like I put stuff out there and I get validating comments and validating interactions. And I have people saying to me, like, oh, your writing was helpful in XYZ way. right? You're getting feedback, positive feedback from people, and yet you still go, why? Like, I'm a fraud. Like, they're going to figure it out. Like, I'm just pretending. And I think it's a tool of the devil. I really honestly do. Like, it's a God-given ability and talent and gifting that he's bestowed to us to steward creativity. And of course, Satan's going to want to try to keep us from doing the thing that God designed us to do, right? Like, that's just part of it. But it's hard to remember that in the day-to-day when you're kind of just feeling that intense, like how is it that people are trusting me with this project? Or really people are going to read this? Like, it's, you know, who am I to do this thing?
It's been something recently that I feel like I've finally kind of entered into a space where I kind of understand myself, and I understand my relationship with the miry clay, and my relationship with the one who pulls me out of it. And which it's almost embarrassing for me to say that it's taken me kind of this long to really understand. I mean, I've been a children's pastor for 8 years, but before that, I was involved in children's ministry for, I think it was 12 years, been involved in disability ministry for 16 years. I've been involved in, you know, Christian comic books, so like all these different places of ministry where I'm teaching, and and there's been some moments where, okay, the thing I'm teaching myself, like things are being revealed, but I'm like, I feel like I wasted time. But again, it's not wasted time. You know, all those learning moments along the way are building up into like what's needed for the moment. And so it's not like I've been just living my life in a depressed wasteland since day zero. But at the same time, I feel like I'm finally kind of understanding how to deal with the like the miry clay and walking through. And so it's been interesting.
And keeping your eyes on the one who's created you. And who's tasked you with doing this work that he's tasked you with. You know,
and so like I said, those words will stick with me, and the bad reviews, and not just those, but you know, other things people say. Someone, you know, they phrase it as, you know, you're letting it live rent free in your head, you know. And I haven't put this video out yet, and I don't know if I have quite the right angle yet for myself, but there's enough of an angle to talk about it here, and that is you have those things living rent free in your head, but then you also have the person who paid the price, you know, and that's the one you need to keep your eyes on. And that's the one, you know, is knocking at the door, you know, and so he wants in, you know, and obviously that's referring to that kind of opening relationship with him when it talks about, behold, I stand at the door and knock. But, you know, who are you giving the space to in, you know, you only have so much rent, you know, not so much rent, so much space in your house, you know, and you've got these people or things that are just taking up space in there that
they're freeloading
there. It doesn't belong there. They're squatters.
And,
you know, and the landlord wants to spend time with you.
That's such a beautiful image. I love that. That's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that with us, because I think that's going to help, you know, our listeners in knowing that this is a common thing. Most creatives deal with this. You're not alone in your struggle, and keep your eyes on Jesus, because he wants to be there with you. He wants to pull you up. He wants you to set you on your feet and guide you along this path that he's designed you to walk. So I appreciate that you shared that with us. It's a very powerful imagery. So shifting directions just slightly. After we got some preaching in there. Can't help it, right? You're a pastor.
No, that's just what happens sometimes.
So this novel that you've written, you have decided it's going to be for a reader, and you've decided to self-publish. So can you talk to us a little bit about that decision that you've made? Because obviously you have like a body of work behind you. You could probably pitch something to a traditional publisher and they would take notice, at least, because you have a somewhat of a proven record. You've worked with Zondervan. So what kind of led to that decision?
I'm impatient, and I just want to get it out there. And here's the other thing, though. I look at what I've written, and I'm looking at like, who's the market for it? And there's not a big market for this.
Okay. And why do you say that?
Well, I say that because as I was reading it the last time, and enjoying it. Like, that's the thing. I wrote
Yeah.
the novel I wanted to write. I wrote the novel I wanted to read.
Mm.
And so that's great. And so,
Yeah.
but I was reading it, and I read a lot of different things. I love all sorts of different things. But one genre that I really like is old school science fiction. And as I was reading it this last time, I realized this does not feel like The Martian. This does not feel like The Expanse. This does not feel like these more.
Are you talking like
read,
more like H.G. Wells type? Is that more of the like
no, not that
that...
old school.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I'm talking more like I'm going to throw out some names. I'm not saying I'm in their league because these are the
You're
giants.
just saying it's just in that vein. Yes.
In the
okay.
vein of Asimov or early Arthur Clarke or even C.S. Lewis with his sci-fi. There's definitely, some elements of, the space opera that that those guys didn't necessarily get into that I'm talking about. But so I mean it harkens back to, I think, kind of the foundational things that I had read in junior high and in early high school, where it just doesn't feel like the modern sci-fi novel. So there's that. It feels old school, which might have a niche, might have a market for that, but it's not a big one. It's also, you asked me off mic if it was a Christian science fiction novel.
Right.
I would say yes, conditionally, because that's not the, it depends on how you define, is it a Christian book or not?
I was going to say, I had a conversation with a writer just the other day. He's writing fantasy, and we kind of got into the same question. Like, is it a Christian fantasy novel? And his response was, I'm a Christian and my worldview has come out in it.
There. Yes.
But I'm telling the story. Right. Yeah. And the story is not going to contradict my Christian worldview.
Right. And there are some characters in this book that have a Christian worldview behind them. But not every character, and it's not even the primary character. So the primary character is something I don't know what's going to happen with him if I ever do another book. I call him a pre-Christian in the sense that I am setting up a soft heart for him, but it's not in this book. He just has a conversation, that kind of thing. So there's, I'm a Christian. I've written the book. I've not written it. Like, some of my stuff actually does start with the message, capital M. This is what I'm going to say to the world. And it has the grand thesis statement, and I'm going to write a story that supports that. And I have started some of my work like that. This is not one that started like that. This is one that started with an idea. I actually started with two different ideas that when I sat down for NaNoWriMo, and I was like, I'm bringing them together, and I'm going to take this one idea that came from something that a friend of mine drew, and that really struck me. Like, I want to know the story behind that. And then the other thing was a story where I was like, I want to do my Star Trek. What will my Star Trek be? What will my Firefly be? Where I've got my own little cast of characters who live on
your
this
own world
spaceship. And they go around and they do their things. And I kind of pulled those two things together and stripped them both down, built them both back up. And that was, so that's kind of where the story came from. But so that's where at the same time, we talk about marketing and it's, I think, a little too Christian for the secular market, but not necessarily Christian enough for the Christian market. Although the Christian sci-fi market, I don't know.
Is there really anybody like really just publishing Christian sci-fi? Like, I don't know of anybody, but maybe you do, because that's more of what you read.
There are a couple, yes.
Okay.
But I don't think they could be interested in what I've got. And I'm speaking for them. I'm putting words in their mouth.
I know.
Maybe they would
do,
be,
right?
and if they want to hear my pitch, I'll pitch it to them. But I'm impatient. I don't want to have to wait another 18 months.
Yes.
To go through either getting an agent, working with a publisher, and then I want to get it out there now. I really do.
It's hard. I think that writers, sometimes we set out with this idea of like, oh, I want to go the traditional publishing route. And it's not until, we spend time researching the project we're going to do. We spend time writing the project we're going to do. And then now we have to pitch the project that we're going to do. That can take like anywhere from a year to 5 years before you even get picked up. And then it's another 2 years. Typically, like I was just at a writing conference and they were saying about a 2-year turnaround right now on pretty much any book out there.
So I
Unless
was
it's
lowballing with 18 months.
yeah, you were. They were talking about just different things that the pandemic has like with paper demand, supply and demand of like paper and print shops and turnaround and staff and all the things that has come out of that. But their whole point was, it does take time. And if you're like, if you're in the same position you are, if you have a smaller niche, and if you don't want to wait, if this is something you want to serve your readership now, then you might want to go the indie route.
And here's the other thing with that is, and this is something that happened even when I was working with Zondervan, not so much with Marvel, but that's a different story because Marvel has a single distribution point, which is the comic book shops in the United States. That's
right.
Those are the sales numbers that matter.
Yeah.
And there's a couple different distributors now. There used to be a monopoly in distribution where there was just one. You got into Diamond Distribution's Previews catalog that went out to every single comic book shop in the United States.
Yes.
And, they would order every single Marvel comic.
Yes.
They may not order you as an independent comic. And we even got featured in that thing with one of my books, and we canceled the book after 3 issues because it just wasn't sustaining the numbers for the print run. So comic books in that sense were a little bit different, but with Zondervan, I needed to do self-promotion.
And really?
Yeah.
Even back, because this would have been, when did those books come out? Like more than 5 years ago, right?
It's over a decade ago.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a while ago because I remember when they came out.
So what happened was they did a real big push at the beginning.
Okay.
And the launch point in the summer was huge.
Okay.
And it was the only book that they end capped in their catalog, in the mom and pop shops and everything. And
now, was it Zondervan or Zondervan Kids?
Zonder Kids, but it was still, at the time, and it made things awkward for my dad. He was an area rep for Zondervan, and so he's going into the stores and saying, "Hey, I've got these books. Yeah, that is my last name, and yes, it is my son, but that's not why I'm pushing these."
Right.
When the publisher was thinking about this, and so the children's editor was in a meeting, and my dad was in the meeting with them, and they said, "Yeah, Larry's son is a writer. I know everyone says they're a writer, but he actually is someone we're going to be working with." And,
that's funny.
Yeah, but anyway, after that initial push, they changed children editors, and so the children's editor after that still honored the contract, allowed us to finish out the 8 volumes that we did for each series, 150-page volumes. So it's still a financial risk for them, but they weren't promoting it after that point. And so it became this kind of thing where I'm like, if I want this to sell, I'm self-promoting.
Yeah.
And I'm not good at that. I'm not.
Yeah.
And
it's hard. It's hard. It's like a whole nother skill set.
So, and that's another thing where I'm hearing, not that I have experience, but I'm hearing that even if you're being published by a publisher, you're doing the legwork.
Unless your platform is larger and they can anticipate sales coming out of the legwork that they're doing, you're not going to get very much support marketing and publishing or promotions wise, which feels counterintuitive because it's like, well, if my platform's large already, then why do I need the support necessarily? It's kind of like
that's another piece why though I'm saying I'm just going to go this route. If I'm going to be self-promoting anyway,
right,
let's cut out the middleman.
Yes.
And there's not the cost involved that used to be involved in self-publishing. And
because it's print on demand now.
Right.
You're not doing, unless you go the hybrid route and you pay them, but you really don't have to.
In my experience with that was, with comic books, it's all graphic, and so it's full color printing.
I was just gonna say that's expensive.
Make a certain number to get the print run, and it's a lot of money to self-publish. And we lost money self-publishing comic books because again, it wasn't lost time, but it was definitely lost money. But putting those things out there created stepping stones to get noticed, and like all the stuff that I detailed already. But yeah, and so again, it's, well, financially, I don't have to go and print 1,000 copies
Right.
that are just going to sit in my closet, which I moved a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago now, and I ended up tossing 8
Oh,
boxes of
oh,
a comic that we had
did your heart
printed.
just like break?
No, because they were heavy and they were just keeping space in my closet. And it was issue 1 of a 3-issue series that we never printed issue 2. I
Oh,
wrote issue
wow.
2, but no drawings came out of it. Issue 3 was an idea, but we knew what it was going to be, but issue 1 didn't sell.
Mm,
And so I had, however many hundreds of copies, and I was just, okay, I guess we're gonna toss these. I recycled them.
right.
I didn't throw them away. I
Okay.
recycled
Okay.
them. I feel bad. I made my dad, when we were moving, and we brought them to the new house, but I said, Dad, we're just gonna put these in the back of your truck. Can you just take them over to the recycling center and just drop them in there? And
Just drop them out.
just
Just
let's
drop them
make
off.
sure that my name's not, oh no, my name is on every single thing there. So
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yep. That's funny. Yes, it is a different world. Self-publishing is a different world now. And so I understand your decision to say, it's a particular niche. There's not that many publishers doing it. But even if I went with a publisher, I'd probably have to do a lot of marketing and promotion myself. So why not cut out that middleman? It's not costly to do self-publishing. You already have a cover.
which
The thing,
that's
things,
the other thing, is I'm going cheap on everything. So
well,
that
yeah.
cover looks like I spent, I want to say 10 times, maybe even, no, not 10 times, 15 times more than I
I
actually
am
spent.
like, what is this cover look like? I'm so intrigued at this point.
I mean, it's on my Facebook page. I can send
Oh,
it to
okay.
you.
Yeah, I'll have to look
Yeah.
it up. That's
So,
funny. But yeah, exactly. It, it's looking at that bottom line of saying like, okay, what is my goal? What and how can I accomplish that goal in a way that's profitable so that I can continue doing the work that I'm doing.
and the other thing, I look at this as, it's a grand experiment. I've never written anything like this before. I've never published. I mean, the whole thing is kind of this, I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this. And if nothing else, the one thing I am going to do, again, keeping it on the cheap, but I am planning to set up my own LLC.
Okay.
That's really just for me to be able to streamline the money behind it. And I'm going to also use that for some of the podcasting money that I have coming in. One of the audio podcasts that I have, we have a Patreon, and I'm going to use that to bring the money out of Patreon and send it out to some of the actors that we have that we're working with.
You're starting to think more like holistically, like this is my business.
Yeah.
And this is just another source of revenue, is this one particular project.
And this way I can keep everything clean and, pull if I need to, but, pay myself out of that if I need to. But, I'm also really looking very closely at doing an anthology book. I have a great idea for it. And I've got some writer friends who they love the idea too. And I think this could be really cool. Well, if we do this with an LLC shell, then that way, again, I can, if we do a Kickstarter or something to pay the writers, or if we do something else, I don't know how it's all going to work out, but just the idea is, stepping back into what I was started with, 15, 16, 17 years ago, we created an LLC for self-publishing comic books. And so kind of almost looking back at that, and I don't have any dreams or designs where this will be the big Christian science fiction publisher. I don't think I'm going to be able to replicate or do what other people are already doing.
You and these other authors are like, we want to tell these really great sci-fi stories. We really want to do well with it. And this is how let's band together and do that well together.
And the main thing for me is that community. And actually, when we started the publishing with comic books, we called it Community Comics.
Oh, cool.
Because it was about coming together in community and working together on projects. And one of the things that happened was me and the other 3 guys who were on the actual like organization side of things, we got headhunted away to Zondervan. So my
Okay.
buddy Bud, he ended up being the line editor. My friend Sherwin ended up being the graphics. I don't know what you would call his role, but he did all of the titling, and he did all of the making sure all the covers look good. And so he's basically the artistic manager, I think. And then I was doing writing on a few, and so we basically got headhunted from our own company to
That's fun.
do this. And
That's funny.
but yeah, I just feel like there is a space for it. One of the things I'm doing on my YouTube channel, which is an intentional thing, I have the podcast Strangers and Aliens. We've been around for 10 years, 11 years. And it's about science fiction, fantasy, and Christianity. And we're almost 400 episodes now.
Wow.
And
That's impressive. It takes a lot to stay committed to a podcast that long.
It's been fun. It's been work, but I
Yeah.
started doing YouTube as well along with that, which was a very intentional thing to do, because I know that there's a lot of stuff on YouTube about writing and about writing science fiction, about writing Christian fiction. I found a few people who were doing reviews of Christian science fiction, and I'm like, well, I want to connect readers with Christian science fiction. And so I started doing one of the things on that YouTube channel is it worth reading? And, because people look at Christian fiction and say, it's Christian fiction. It's not worth reading.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
which is so sad, but yes.
And so I'm not going to review anything that's not worth reading.
Right.
But it's every few weeks or so I get one of those out. I started with C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy, and then I've also done a couple, one more modern one, and and then but I'm trying to say, there's stuff worth reading out there, but again, that's building my brand.
Yeah.
And building the brand of Ben Avery as Christian science fiction. And so when I do drop my book, I don't know how to promote it on my page without it looking like I'm promoting a book, but
well, you got it. Like, people aren't going to know there's a book to read unless you tell them there's a book to read, right?
So, but that's an intentional point for me, is to say, okay, this is a way to build a brand. Strangers and Aliens, the podcast. I just recorded an episode with one of my co-hosts where I pretended he wasn't a co-host because I was interviewing him about his Kickstarter with his graphic novel, and so just using those different spaces that I can use. I don't have a huge platform, but what I have, I'm give a shot. We'll see what happens,
And what I think is valuable in what you just said, and what I would want somebody to pay attention to right now, is that you're thinking not in just how do I market one product. You're saying, how do I build a brand around what I want to accomplish? I want Christians, or I want people to know about Christian sci-fi. You want to connect people to stories that have that Christian worldview undertone to it. And so, like, that's your goal. That's your message. That's how you're serving people. And so you're thinking broader than just, how do I market this one book? You're saying, how do I connect people with this bigger goal? And that might be through my podcast. That might be through this podcast. That might be doing a book review. That might be publishing a book that does that. Any way that you come at it, but your goal at the end of the day is to connect people to those stories. And so I think that's really an important distinction that not every writer realizes when they go into, well, how do I market? How do I build a platform? How do I do all these things? They're thinking just for the book. And it's like, you can't do that. If you want to be in this for the long game, if you want to be sustainable, if you want to have an actual writing career, you have to think about yourself and your brand and what your brand is trying to accomplish. And then think about books and podcasts and all those things as different revenue streams, different sources of income for your brand. So I think that's really wise that you are intentionally and strategically doing that.
Yeah, you have to think bigger than just that book, because if that book is all you have, then people are going to get tired of seeing it too. Like that's, and yeah, I feel like it's a brave new world.
Yep.
And there are ways that you can get in front of people that you had never been able to do before. But you have to think long game too.
Right.
Because I find it so strange when I'll see someone and they just here's my book, buy it, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And it's just, wait a minute, what is
Right.
happening with that book, you know?
Right.
And so I'm trying to figure out what are some ways, and I don't have everything all figured out. Again, this is the grand experiment.
I was going to say, but I
And
don't think any of us really do. And the world of online marketing changes so rapidly that sometimes it feels like you just start to figure something out and then it changes and you're like, oh, crap, now I got to figure out this thing now. But I think that that's part of being an entrepreneur, right? Is trying things, figuring out what feels authentic to you and your brand, and then just keep doubling down on the things that are working and experimenting with the things that are new and pitching the things that don't work for you.
yeah, I like what you said though, staying authentic. Like I think it's really important to be genuine and authentic. And again, actually, when I was talking with my friend yesterday, Evan, my co-host, and we kind of hammered in on, you know, when you're working on a project, it needs to be something that you are genuinely passionate about.
Yep.
And you know that you actually care about, you know, and there needs to be passion, there needs to be talent, and there needs to be intentionality, and there needs to be genuineness. And
Right.
yeah,
Right.
just
So true.
you gotta care.
You gotta care. You gotta care. You gotta care. You gotta care about the other person on the receiving end of the work that you do.
Yeah, you got to care about your work, you got to care about yourself, and you got to care about your audience and who they are. You know, they're people, you know.
Yes.
And one of the things I used to say, because there's a lot of really bad Christian comics out there, and back in the day when we were self-publishing, the idea was, let's find the cream of the crop, let's help, you know, build up then also the people who aren't the cream of the crop. How can we help them and encourage them?
Right.
And the one thing I would always say, and I would still say this about any artistic expression, is that there is someone out there who is going to appreciate it, and there is someone out there who is going to be touched by it. It might be your mom, you know, who's going to be touched by it. It might be, you know, Tolkien started The Hobbit as a story for his children, you know, and if it never was anything more than that, that was a successful story, because his children got it and loved it and held him to the details of it and said, wait, his hat was blue, you know, when you were talking about before. And, you know, so even if The Hobbit hadn't become one of the greatest novels of all time, in my opinion, it would have been a success.
I might argue with you on that one, but
I love The Hobbit so much. It's in my top 10.
Okay.
It's in the bottom 5 of the top 10. The kind of recycles around. Those top 5 don't move, but actually that's not entirely true. Till We Have Faces, just last time I read it, punched its way to the top and said, I'm number 1 and I'm not moving.
Really? What book was this?
Till We Have Faces, C.S. Lewis.
Till We Have Faces. I have not read that one by him.
Oh, you have to read that book. If nothing else, because it's C.S. Lewis that you haven't read before, you know?
Yeah.
But it is beautiful. And I've read it, I call it a decade book. It's a book to read every decade. And I read it twice in the last decade. Once is because I read it for this decade, and then I read it for our podcast. And the time when I read it for our podcast, I found myself, and this has only happened to me once. This is the only time where I actually found tears as I was reading. Wow. Because it just touched me so much. It was just so beautiful. And, you know, when I read it in high school, I liked it because, hey, C.S. Lewis, and it's fantasy, and it's not for kids.
Right.
Right. You know,
I feel that way. I feel that way about some books. Like, I read The Great Gatsby in high school and absolutely hated it. Hated it with passion. I like, this is the stupidest book ever. How did this guy become like considered like so great? Blah, blah, blah. And then I reread it as an adult and I was like, oh, okay. This is a commentary on humanity and its state of being. I'm like, okay, it's a little bit deeper than I got as a high schooler. And I think sometimes, you know, we make high schoolers read these classics and then they don't go back and revisit them. And I just think that's a loss for them, right?
It is.
Because you're like, there's just so much richness that comes out of storytelling that when you reread something at a different stage in life, you're like, oh my gosh, that's hitting a little bit different. I mean, that happens when I listen to books with my kids, listening to this, you know, listening to the Chronicles of Narnia for the second time as an adult, totally different experience than when I read them as a kid, you know? So I get what you you're saying, and to find books where you feel like you want to revisit them each decade, that's priceless when you find that kind of a book.
Yeah. And Till We Have Faces, yeah. I
I'm gonna
could
have
go
to,
on forever about it.
as on that note, I think that's a perfect time for us to kind of wrap things up. And on that note, I want to ask you what kind of advice you have for either somebody who wants to, I guess maybe two questions. For the person who wants to get into like comic books, graphic novels, like a writer who wants to get into that world, what advice do you have for them? And then just for a creative writerly person dealing with this world that we live in as writers, in this publishing industry, in this online entrepreneurial space, what advice do you have for them?
So on the comic book side, especially if you want to be a writer, I would say, was it Throw Mama from the Train, where he says, always be writing or something like that. A writer writes always. That's what it is, I think.
Okay.
Just, you gotta try it. One thing that's going to help you is write a script and then try drawing your script, even if you can't draw. And because I did that 24-hour challenge where it's one page every hour for 24 straight hours. And that was another thing that just kind of shifted my mindset when I realized, and I was trying to pace things out myself and do things with that. I was, it just really went a long way in helping me communicate with my artist. Now, the other thing you have to remember is every artist needs a different kind of script. And so when you're writing a script, it is a letter to that artist. It is specific to that artist. You could write a generic script that any artist could pick up and it would probably still work out okay. But eventually if you have a relationship with that artist, you're going to start learning how to write to them, write for them. And that creates some of the best work. Now, the absolute best work is going to be the person who can draw and write, because what's up here is immediately what's on the page.
Right.
But when you have a good symbiotic relationship with an artist, it's a wonderful thing. And like I said, I've had some great artists that I work with.
I just got this thought in my head. I'm like, what if we writers who are writing like novels or short, it doesn't matter, text-based writing, what if we thought of it as a letter to our reader? The way that you're describing it as a letter to the artist, like, here, I'm going to explain it well enough that you can visualize it and put it down on paper. What if we approach it the same way for our reader? I'm going to do I'm going to do such a great job explaining this to you in a way that you can experience it. Like, what if we approach it that way? I think we would do a much better job if we kept our reader in the forefront of our mind of like, how do I explain this well for them so they can truly experience what it is that I'm experiencing in my head. Such valid, very good advice right there.
Well, because when you're writing a novel, you are you're allowing the reader to be the director of the movie. You're giving stage directions, you're giving emotional beats, but your reader is the one. And that's where, the Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson with Lord of the Rings, not Hobbit, but with Lord of the Rings, he created what I saw in my head. And he did so well with it that it's like, I feel like I've seen this before because he translated it so well to the screen, I agree. And I don't think he ruined the experience. There's been some other movies where I'm like, it's ruined now because I can't help but picture that actor.
Yes.
Fortunately, the Hobbit trilogy did not ruin the Hobbit for me. So I'll just leave it there. But yeah, and so that is what you're doing though, in a lot of ways. You are creating stage directions, whether it's internal monologue emotion stage directions or whether it's actual action set pieces or whatever. But
so true. So what advice would you give to the creative, the writer,
that's
the person who's doing this work that God has called them to?
Again, I would say a writer writes always or whatever. But at the same time, you gotta, again, build those muscles, get better at it. You always can learn more. That's something I would always say is you can always get better. You're never going to hit a point where you can say, I'm the perfect writer. No one can hit that point because there's not a golden standard. There's always growth available. I would say always get another set of eyes on your book.
And we're going to end this and you're going to be like, okay, who's going to have the second set of eyes on my book? Aren't you?
Yeah, am I gonna have to wait another 2 months now and sit on
Uh,
this book? But maybe it's for the
it'll be
best if
worth
I do
it,
that.
right? Yeah, it
But
might be. But you know,
it
two
might
months
be.
is like I say give yourself a deadline and then work back from it. So set your deadline for when you want the book to release and then work back from it.
I just got to find that person, you
Yeah.
know. I got to
Well,
find
I
that
think
person
if you
or
set the deadline,
persons.
you'll find the person. That's my theory.
We'll see. Maybe I'll come back on and talk about all the mistakes that I made and if they worked or not with,
There we go. All the rules you broke and whether or not they
yeah,
paid off.
yeah. Like I said, I'm just so impatient. And that's honestly, though, that's everyone who I've talked to, I'm saying, you have to do this, get another set of eyes. Whenever I say that, a lot of times they're impatient and
Mm,
that's why they don't do it. But then I'm reading their book and I'm like, there's so many typos in this book.
yes.
And, or they're, I don't understand what this means. Or,
Hmm.
yeah,
You got to get that feedback because
it's
you
true.
don't
It's
see what
true.
you don't like. We read what we think should be on the page, right? When we're rereading our work.
And the other thing I used to do, and I haven't done this, but it's a novel, so it's so long, is I used to read everything backwards.
Yeah, it's hard when it's a novel. I agree. It's
And
like, and especially like you'll find that your like first couple of chapters are really well polished because you can get through them and reread them frequently. But then when you get to that messy middle, it gets messy because it's harder to frequent it.
with comic scripts, it was very easy for me. And I mean that literally, not read it backwards, but read every sentence in reverse order.
Mm,
So you're taking every sentence out of context
yes.
and it doesn't make sense, And
Mm,
since I already know the context from having written it before, it is the kind of thing where, okay, does this sentence work? Is it structured well? And does it fit the tone of what I'm setting for and then by
right.
going backwards, though, it takes it out, like I said, out of context enough that you're approaching it as a new thing. And
Right.
so, but with a novel, I can't imagine doing that with, however many
That'd be rough.
thousands of sentences. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But the other thing I would say as an encouragement, especially even on the business side, would be, like I was saying before, and that's that, you know, this artistic expression, this creative drive, God's given it to us. And whether he's given it to us to put it out into the void or whether he's given it to us to express something that helps us to, just work through something. I
Hmm.
mean, like a dream, when
Right.
they say dreams, are you working through things in your sleep that,
Hmm.
whether it's different fears or whatever it might be.
Right.
Um, you know and sometimes writing is therapeutic or whatever, or whether it is like something where you're like, I got to share this with the world, I got a story to tell. I would say you do have a story to tell,
Mm,
you do have a creation to make, and that's an element of being made in the image of God. Is we serve a creative God. This is from the beginning of our podcast, like from our first episode, we talked about we serve a creative God. And one of the ways that we are like him, that's not a moral thing, we're like following in Jesus's footsteps,
right.
this is not a moral imperative that everyone must do, but I think it is something that everyone does do. We do
Yes.
create and we do
Yes.
build, whether it's with Lego or whether it's, just telling jokes with our friends or whatever, we do create, and story is so important.
Mm,
And so if you are there and you are listening and you say, I've got a story to tell, yeah, you do. And you have a story to share and you have a value to the world. And so whether you are self-publishing on the smallest possible scale or whether you are publishing on the largest scale, there is someone out there who needs to hear what you have to say. And
amen.
even
Amen.
if it's a book that gets all 1-star reviews because nobody likes the time period that you are writing about, um, there's somebody out there.
Yes.
And it may be mom, it may be your spouse, it may be your kid, it may be just some weird rando on the internet who happens across this thing. um yeah, so if nothing else, I hope that you're encouraged. I would say be encouraged. Not I hope you're encouraged, be encouraged. I'm telling you, this is the imperative. Be
Yes.
encouraged. God loves you. God's given you a story. God's given you uh, a creative drive, and use it. Use
Use
it.
it.
And So I don't know if that's business or if that's
I think it has to be both,
self-help.
right? Like we have to hold to that truth, because at the end of the day, we do the work we do. We try to be wise stewards of this creativity that he's given us and make good business decisions. But at the end of the day, he's the one that brings about the results and the outcome of it. And so we have to hold true to that truth, that he's given us a story, and we're just called to be obedient in telling it, right? We're just called to be obedient, and we have to kind of hold true to that truth.
God loves you, and he's given us this gift of creativity. So have fun with it. And I'm saying all these things. These are all things I struggle with too, and so it's not that I've got it all figured out. Maybe I do have it all figured out and I just can't act on it. But either way,
Either way, it's important to remember. Well, thank you, Ben, so much for being on the podcast today. I really do appreciate all the wisdom you shared with us, all the encouragement you shared with us, and just the openness and honesty you've shared about your journey as a writer. And I really do value the fact that you willingly came on and shared those things with us so that we can be encouraged in the work that we do.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I love talking about this stuff. Like I said, I could go for hours, but we don't have that time.
Well, I do appreciate it. Maybe you'll have to come back on later on and tell us all the things that you did wrong and how it went for you in publishing your first novel. And for you, the listener, today, thank you for being here with us. Join us next week as we continue to talk about the business of Christian fiction. Bye.